They thought I wouldn't notice. They were wrong. My name is Eleanor Margaret Whitman. I'm 71 years old. And for most of my life, I worked as an accounts supervisor at a textile company in Ohio. Numbers were my world. Balances, records, patterns. I learned early that what people say and what they do rarely match. But accounts always tell the truth. That lesson would save me one day. The woman I was before. I wasn't born wealthy. I built my life slowly, paycheck by paycheck, sacrifice by sacrifice. After my husband passed away unexpectedly, I raised 3 children on my own. I paid for school, helped with down payments, covered emergencies they never repaid. I didn't complain. That's what mothers do, or so I believed. I trusted them. That was my second mistake. The day they took me away. When my health started declining, my children sat me down. Mom, it's for your safety. You'll be taken care of. It's temporary. They chose the old age home. Clean, quiet, respectable. They'd packed my clothes. They locked my house. They promised to visit. I believed them. Life inside the old age home. Time slows down in places like that. Days blend into each other. Meals are scheduled. Voices echo. I learned to sit with myself. No one asked about my house. No one mentioned my belongings. I assumed they were safe. After all, they were my children. The first sign. One afternoon, a fellow resident asked me casually, "Did your family sell your house?" I laughed. "No," I said confidently. They wouldn't. That night, I couldn't sleep. Something felt off. The call that changed everything. A month later, I received a call from an old neighbor. "Eleanor, I didn't know you were moving." "I'm not," I replied. There was a pause. "Well, your living room furniture was taken out last week." And a man said it was sold. My hands trembled. Furniture. My furniture. The couch my husband bought. The dining table where my children grew up. Sold. Jewelry next. A week later, another call. The jeweler. "Your daughter brought in several items. Asked about resale value." My wedding ring. My mother's necklace. Gone. They didn't ask. They didn't wait. They assumed. The pain of realization. I sat on my bed that night staring at the wall. They weren't helping themselves. They were taking from me. While I was still alive, I cried, not loudly, quietly, because betrayal doesn't scream. It sinks. What they didn't know was this. I had worked in finance too long to leave my future unsecured. Years ago, when I first noticed their entitlement, I had made a decision. A silent one. The transfer. I had transferred ownership of my bank account, savings, and investments. Not to my children. To a trust, managed by a third party. For my care. For my dignity. They didn't know. Because they never asked. Waiting. I didn't confront them. I didn't argue. I waited. Because sometimes the strongest response is patience. The calm before the storm. They continued selling. Assuming more would follow. Assuming I was powerless. They had no idea what was coming. What comes next? Soon they would discover. The money was gone. The accounts were inaccessible. And ownership was no longer theirs to claim. And when they came to me demanding answers, they would learn that foresight is a form of power. They didn't come to visit me out of concern. They came because the money stopped. I noticed the change before they said anything. The phone rang more often. Messages came with forced warmth. "How are you feeling, Mom? Do you need anything?" I knew what that meant. The first question. Susan came to see me after nearly 3 months of silence. She brought coffee. Smiled too much. After a few minutes of small talk, she finally asked, "Mom, do you remember where you keep your bank papers?" There it was. I looked at her calmly. "No," I said. "I don't." The pressure builds. A week later, all 3 children came. That had never happened before. Daniel spoke carefully. "Mom, we need to access some funds for your care." I nodded. "Of course," I said. "From where?" They exchanged looks. "The accounts," Michael replied. "Your accounts." I folded my hands. "I don't have any." The silence that followed was heavy. Anger slips out. Susan snapped first. "What do you mean you don't have any? You always did." I met her eyes. "I transferred them." "To who?" Daniel demanded. "To myself," I answered. just wisely. The truth revealed. I explained slowly. Years ago, after noticing their growing entitlement, I had created a living trust. All accounts, all investments, protected, untouchable, used only for my care. Michael stood up. You did this behind our backs. I replied calmly. You sold my belongings behind no apology, just panic. They didn't deny it. They justified it. We assumed. We thought. We needed. I stopped them. Assumptions don't give ownership. The balance of power shifts. For the first time, they realized something important. They no longer controlled the narrative. The money was not theirs. It never was. The consequences. Bills they expected me to cover went unpaid. Loans they counted on weren't coming. Their anger turned to fear. What hurt them most, it wasn't losing the money. It was losing access. To control. To entitlement. A mother still. I didn't celebrate. I didn't mock them. I simply said, I will be taken care of. I suggest you take care of yourselves too. Aftermath. They left angry, but quieter. Because anger without leverage is weak. What comes next? They would soon learn something else. Selling my belongings didn't give them victory. It gave me clarity. And the final truth was still coming. She had already decided, but no one knew when. My name is Margaret Evelyn Harper. I'm 78 years old. For 34 years, I worked as a school librarian in a small town, where everyone thought they knew me. The quiet old woman with neat hair, gentle hands and eyes that always seemed tired. What they didn't know was that silence isn't always weakness. Sometimes it's survival. This is the part of the story no one wanted to hear, but everyone needed to. The day everything came back. When the lawyer called my children to the reading of my final documents, they arrived confident. Why wouldn't they? They had already sold my furniture, my wedding jewelry, the old oak dining table where I once served them warm meals and stories. They believed my time was already over, that whatever was left would naturally belong to them. They were wrong. The lawyer's voice was calm, almost kind. Your mother transferred ownership of her bank accounts 9 years ago. The room froze. My eldest daughter laughed nervously. That's not possible. The lawyer slid the papers forward. She signed them herself, fully aware, legally verified. The accounts, every savings, bond, every emergency fund, every dollar she had quietly set aside now belonged to Eleanor Grace Harper, my youngest granddaughter. The quiet one, the introverted one, the one they never took serious, the child who watched everything. Eleanor never interrupted conversations. She listened. She noticed how her uncles spoke louder when they wanted control, how her aunts visited only when bills were due, how no one visited me unless something needed signing. She visited without asking for anything. She brushed my hair. She read to me when my hands trembled too much to hold a book. She asked questions no one else cared to. Are you scared, Grandma? Do you regret anything? One night I told her the truth. I'm not afraid of dying, I said. I'm afraid of leaving things unfinished. That night I handed her the key to the safe deposit box, not because she asked, but because she understood. Why I stayed silent. People assume old age makes you confused. It doesn't. It makes you honest. I knew my children were selling my belongings while I was still alive. The nursing staff tried to protect me, but I told them not to interfere. Let them, I said. They'll reveal themselves. And they did. When my children finally realized the money was gone, they panicked. Phone calls, threats, accusations. She manipulated you, they shouted at Eleanor. She stole from us. Eleanor cried that night, not because of the money, but because she finally saw who they were without masks. The courtroom. They took her to court. They said she was too young, too quiet, too weak to handle responsibility. The judge asked one question. Did the grandmother act of her own free will? The lawyer presented my medical records, psychological evaluations, video recordings of me explaining every decision. On the screen, my face appeared calm, steady, clear. I'm not confused, I said. I am careful. The case was dismissed. And something else happened that day, something no one expected. Eleanor stood taller. Revival. The family business, the one everyone assumed the eldest son would inherit, was failing. Loud leadership. Poor listening. Greed disguised as confidence. Eleanor didn't rush in. She observed. She studied quietly, cut unnecessary expenses, listened to workers who had been ignored for years. Within 18 months, profits returned. Within 3 years, the business expanded. The same relatives who mocked her now asked for meetings. She said no, not out of revenge, but boundaries. My final days. In my last weeks, I wasn't alone. The nursing staff sang for me on my birthday, held my hand when breathing became hard. My children didn't come. I had already changed my emergency contact years ago. So when tragedy struck, when my heart finally grew tired, they found out last. And that was not punishment. That was consequence. What my diary revealed. After my death, Eleanor released one final thing, my diary. In it I wrote, I did not raise my children to abandon me, but I raised my granddaughter to recognize truth. Love is not proven by blood, it's proven by presence. The town talked. The family fractured. But something healed. The truth about payback. This was never about revenge. It was about dignity. I didn't leave them nothing. I left them exactly what they earned. And I gave the future to someone who would protect it. Eleanor's last visit. On the day she scattered my ashes, Eleanor whispered, "You trusted me when no one else did." I answered not in words, but in peace. Final message to the reader. Sometimes the quietest people carry the strongest legacies. Sometimes silence is not weakness, it's strategy. And sometimes the greatest inheritance isn't money, it's trust. YouTube style ending. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of someone you love or someone you lost, like this video to honor unheard voices. Subscribe for more real-life stories of truth, courage, and consequence. Share this story because someone out there needs to hear it.